Lovely. Amy, good morning. Ladies and gents, good morning and welcome this morning especially to Wing Commander Jim Calvert, OC-29 Squadron. Jim, good morning.
Hi Dale, good morning. Thanks for having me.
It's genuinely our absolute pleasure. Thanks for taking the time. I know that things will be busy for you. We might as well get straight in then, Jim, if you're happy. And very open start, I guess, but just tell us a bit about yourself. What are you doing currently? What's the role you're in currently, and what brings you to where you
are? Right, so since February I run 29 Squadron. It's the Typhoon Operational Converge Unit, and our primary role really is to train the pilots who are going onto the front line. So they've either joined us through the flying training system, which has probably taken them 4, 5, 6 years, or exchange officers from other nations who fly with us and guest with our squadrons. But yeah, I'm in charge of that squadron, and I've been doing so since February. Before that, crikey, I've been in for 20 years or so, and I guess we'll go into that, and that'll come out in the wash. But yeah, that's where I'm at the moment. It's been an interesting few months in command. It's not quite what I expected, but as for everyone, really, it's certainly a challenge at the moment.
How was it taking over command, Jim, just as we were about to go into lockdown? I mean, I guess you would have had the rumblings around about February that things were going to be interesting, but how's that affected your early days commanding 29?
Yeah, it's been very difficult, and professionally less so. Personally and morally is where I found the major challenge. So yeah, I took over 6th, 7th of February was the handover, midnight between those 2 days. And as you say, we were starting to get wind that things were changing in the world. People were unsure about what was going to happen. But really, to be honest, it was only at the end of March, I think the 23rd of March is when the country went into lockdown. And we made we probably made as big a change as we possibly could at the time, whilst still maintaining a minimum output that the squadron has to. But for me, I mean, and I hope that it comes out throughout this session that it's about people, and it can sound quite trite, but I've got a wife and 2 kids, and the only thing really that mattered to me in February, March, and since has been my family back at home and making sure they're safe, and running a squadron of over nearly 400 people, thinking, hey, they've got the same problems, challenges and worries, and I'm asking them to come into work, telling them, I guess, to come into work every day against this unknown, invisible killer that we certainly in those first few weeks no one really knew how bad it was going to get. So for me, the job for what we were asked to do didn't really change, but it was that real conflict within of asking people to come in and do something that I myself was fairly uncomfortable with, to be brutally honest. So it was hard. It was really difficult.
I think it's a really honest observation, Jim, and we'll touch on it. And we've known each other for a number of years, as other people perhaps won't know. But your desire to make sure that your people are okay and that your family is okay clearly creates a tension. Did the early days after the 23rd of March massively affect the flying program? Were people unable to get in, or was it pretty much business as normal?
For us, it wasn't business as normal. Thankfully, I probably went a little bit further than I stretched the boundaries of the guidance I was given. I'll be careful, I suppose, what I'm saying. It's been recorded. But I was quite firm in the fact that we cannot be business as usual. Whilst we still have an absolute minimum output that we need to keep going, we need to maintain some of our critical commitments to defend UK airspace, for example. We have to ensure we contribute to that, and that was the baseline really for me. So we almost halved our flying program, which meant that we were able to break down. And again, to go back to the people, it was all about how could I have fewer people in work at any one time, and how could I minimize the number of interactions that people had? To be honest, we were throwing darts in the dark. We didn't really know exactly what we were supposed to be doing, or what the best way to run a squadron. So we were doing what we thought was best, and the government guidance was there: be hygienic broadly, and minimise interaction. So we halved the flying programme, which meant that unfortunately we've got a lot of, as I mentioned, we've got a lot of students going through the squadron, and they ended up just suffering by getting further and further behind. Flying training's hard enough at the best of times. When you're sat on the ground and you're not getting any better at flying, which means you're getting worse at flying. For them, it must have been extremely frustrating. Although credit to them, they all just got on with it and understood. But whilst the pilots and the ops side of things, there's relatively few of us. We probably represent 15-20% of the squadron. It was the 80%, the engineers who I was really concerned for. So we broke down. Normally we run a day-night shift construct where at about 4:30 in the afternoon there's a changeover, and we broke down into 4 shifts. So that did a couple of things. First of all, it immediately halved the number of interactions that people had. It ensured that we had some resilience. So if one shift went down, we still had 3 that could, in theory, then continue to operate. But if you halve your manpower, you halve your output, in simple terms. And it was no more scientific than that. I had a chat with my engineering officers and said, we are not going to carry on as normal. Tell me how we can minimize interactions. And they did all the hard work. I took the credit. So well done me.
Is it? Well, yeah, absolutely. What about normality now? Is there a degree of return to normality?
Yeah, there is. Yeah. In April, we halved the flying program. In May, we were about 2/3 to 3/4 of the flying program, but we found that even with that, we were struggling to keep enough pilots current to support defence of UK skies, QRA. So in June, we went back to normal. We pretty much went back. Well, we did go back to a 9-turn-9, which is the 29 Squadron standard flying program. That was by far the harder. That was the harder decision, because that was me. That wasn't unknown. That was the operational task becoming more important than the unknown. But in doing so, in bringing everyone back, we doubled down really on. I mean, I tried to communicate using this sort of thing, like IT. So explain to people, this is the problem. This is what I think we should do. Please come back to me if you disagree. And people did. They disagreed. We spoke about it, chatted, and they came up with ideas as to how we could. It's things that in normal life now, one-way systems around buildings, hand sanitizer at every workstation, little green and red cards on shared computers. So when you sat at the computer, you turned it red. When you log out and walk away, you've got a red card next to the computer. The next person who comes along knows that they need to sanitize that workstation before they use it. Just, little really simple things. And I don't know if you've, the government's nudge unit, it was quite, a couple of years ago, had a presentation at Staff College about the nudge unit and how little things that they did to try and encourage behaviors that ordinarily people would, just because we're lazy as humans, or I am anyway, that you would not do. So it was just little things like we locked a door if we didn't want people to, not a fire door, but we managed access in and out of the building. You had to walk around the hand sanitizer station. So we trebled the amount of hand sanitizer we used overnight almost by making people walk around the thing. Maybe they knocked it over, I'm not sure. But just those little things that, and as much as anything, I think it was psychological. The threat was there, but people knowing that we cared and that there was that we were conscious of what we were doing and we were trying to mitigate some of the risk, I think put minds at ease. But it's hard to access the families back at home, which they're the ones who matter. As I said, it's my wife, my 2 kids, and the families of everyone who worked with me.
We'll come on to the family stuff in a little while, because I know that's essentially the RAF Association is all about looking after the wider family, the RAF community as a whole, whether that's serving families, veterans, and indeed those who haven't served. Actually, a number of our members, a good proportion of our members, don't have any direct connection necessarily. But you mentioned one thing, Jim, about asking your people what they thought. And I'm just interested on your view, and we're going to go right back to the beginning in a minute, and then we'll perhaps finish on 29. So I'm conscious that we're going almost right to the end here, but you invited your team to come back to you. So you said, right, this is how we're going to do what we're going to do. Give me your views back. And you mentioned that some people told you absolutely what they thought, which I'm guessing would be an element of concern. But how did you deal with that leadership challenge of people saying, yeah, I'll tell you, boss, actually, I'll tell you what I'm thinking, and it's not necessarily something you're going to want to hear? Did you get that? And if so, how do you deal with that as a commander?
The first time it happened was, that was March, when we didn't know what was going on, and it was one of the junior pilots, one of the flight attendants on the squadron, sent me a text going, "Hey boss, just to let you know, I'm sure we've all got 1,001 WhatsApp groups, but it all came from someone having the moral courage or the awareness, emotional intelligence to let me know that something was going on. Hey boss, something's going on in one of the WhatsApp groups. It's not quite mutiny, but people are worried." So on the official group, I broke protocol. I set quite tight limits on when the official 29 Squadron WhatsApp groups, you are not allowed to use it after 7 p.m. because people have families, so leave them alone. But I broke protocol and put on the WhatsApp group, hey, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what we should do. What do you all think? And I just got reply after reply, and doing it publicly was powerful, really powerful, because it almost gave people the comfort, and me the comfort, of knowing that I wasn't unique, they weren't unique. We all knew what was going on, and we all had the same worries. And through that, that was the officers initially, and that was really useful, because they came up with all the, like I said, like the engineers came up with the split shift idea. That fell out of a similar deal, but rather than doing it I'm not in a WhatsApp group with 400 people, thankfully. But that was the Sunday evening we did that, and then went in on the Monday, and there's a Vimeo video with me addressing the squadron, going, you know me, I don't know what's going on, but I'm committed to look after you. And I sent that to I distributed that across the squadron. So they all got a quite funny video that I'm sure is going to be adapted and played back to me with various voice overlays. But at the time it was useful, I think, because everyone, A, they knew that I was worried about it, and B, they heard me say to them, I'm worried about it, and this is what we're trying to do. And then, so that was the WhatsApp. How we did it is irrelevant, I guess. It's the fact that I was able to publicly, with all of the pilots, technology assisted, with all of the pilots, all of the ops staff, all of the officers, I should say, on the squadron were able to voice their concerns, and that, one would hope, translated to everyone on the squadron. On the Monday, it was then, how's the feeling amongst the engineers, and they were petrified. And rightly so. They had no idea what was going on. And they're all thinking, we're a training unit. Why are we at work? And part of me agrees with them. But we're a training unit that supports QRA. And that's an operational task that we can't let that plate stop spinning.
How did it feel, Jim, when you asked a very open question and almost said, look, I don't know. I don't have all the answers to the squadron boss. You're telling people that look to you for leadership, I guess. I don't have all the answers. What do you think? You use the word, I think, empowering, or it felt very empowering as my interpretation. Did you feel vulnerable at all when you asked that question, saying, look, I don't know the answer?
Yeah, it was the worst. Doing it with the officers was not so difficult. When I broke, and again, each of the engineering shifts, I got them in the hangar, probably about 30 people. It was, you can imagine, with 2 meters between everyone, it's a pretty big group of people, but saying to them, this is what we need to do. This is the minimum task. And exactly that, I don't have the answers. I don't know what we should do. What's worrying you? What are the things that concern you coming into work? That was the PM of New Zealand, Christina Ardern, is it? Oh, I forget her name. She recently tweeted, she doesn't think that strength and compassion are mutually exclusive. That compassion and strength can be two different things. So how did it feel? It felt uncomfortable exposing myself to criticism, but knowing that they felt the same as me it gave me faith that people knew and understood that we did have a job to do. But crikey, it was tough. A lot of the things like face coverings at the time. The one thing was, we should be wearing face coverings. We're working in close proximity to other people. We should be wearing face covering. And at the time, the government guidance was no. And the moral conflict of, yeah, I don't disagree with you. The government is saying no, and oh, by the way, if we have face coverings, we're taking them away from the NHS. So, and once I had that, looked them in the eye and had that conversation with them, went, all right, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
So how did it feel? I haven't answered your question. Sorry. I don't know.
I think you have, and you've been very honest about it, and dare I say, refreshingly honest. And I think, from a commander's perspective, to be able to stand in front of your entire team and say, "I don't know, I don't have all the answers, but I'm empowering you to help us get to the answers," is, I don't think it's necessarily usual. I think it's a personal view, Jim. I think it's a really, really refreshing take. I want to come back to 29 Squadron later, because that brings you to where you are now, but It's been remiss of me. Let's go right back to the beginning. So you've got little James Calvert, growing up, doing whatever little James Calvert was doing as a youngster. But what did you want to be when you grew up?
I didn't know. For most of my life, for growing up. So little James Calvert running around, well, first of all, he didn't have many clothes on. I grew up in Africa for 5 years, and I think my father first dressed me when I came back to the UK. There you are. You're welcome for that mental image.
No photos, Jim. Okay.
Oh, they're horrible. But we came back to the UK in the mid '80s, when my sister and I were able to go to school. Settled down in Kings Lynn, which, well, I don't know if many people know it, but is a relatively ordinary town. It has its ups, it has its downs, but that's where I grew up. That's where I spent my life. My dad, civil and structural engineer, now retired. My mum was a reception school teacher in Kings Lynn, and she passed away, unfortunately, when I was 13 years old. My sister, a couple of years older than me, going through her GCSEs. You can imagine how difficult life must have been for her. But thankfully for my father, he very soon after found love in my stepmom, got remarried pretty shortly after, and they are extremely happy. They're still in Kings Lynn. But for me, who am I? What did I want to be when I grew up? I don't know what I wanted to be. I played a lot of sport, but I was crap at it. Sorry, excuse me. I wasn't very good at it. So being a professional sportsman was never on the cards. The thing I was least bad at was maths. So I debated whether that following my father's footsteps, engineering or accountancy or whatever. But growing up, I was state educated. I went to a state primary in South Wotton in Kings Lynn, and then King Edward VII High School in Kings Lynn as state secondary. And as good as those schools were, I won't necessarily speak for whether they're good or bad now. I just simply don't know. But as good as those schools were, they were relatively run of the mill, and it wasn't as if there was any affiliation with the military. Whilst RAF Marham down the road, there was. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, to be honest. And this thing behind me, David Bent, by the way, superb artist.
Yeah, so absolutely, recommend him. Yeah, great supporter.
That is print one of a Halifax that he did personally. He did a run of 50 of them. But yeah, that's a Handley Page Halifax that my grandfather flew in the Second World War. Not that one, obviously, but in the Second World War. So he did 32 sorties. So there was always the rumblings of airplanes in the background. And my dad and I used to spend evenings on the kitchen table making little Airfix models, and I would get the biggest brush and the massive pot paint and go over it. He was less than impressed, probably, and had to undo all of my work when I went to bed. But yeah, growing up, I didn't really know. And then Mum passed away when I was 13, and went a bit off the rails. misbehaving, bit of freedom, exploiting my father because he's working really hard trying to raise 2 young kids, and me waiting until he goes out and then having a party at the house. It was touch and go really what I was going to do. Academically, I was doing all right, applied to some universities, and kind of when I was going through GCSEs and A-levels, it was, well, I really need to pick a career. And the Air Force wasn't, I stumbled into it, but you see jets fly and that looks a lot of fun. But it wasn't something I'd always wanted to do. It was I need to pick something, and I almost had not a pros and cons, but a crisis moment of, if I don't set my mind to something, I'm going to meander along and do nothing in my life. So Dad said, well, and we had a chat, and he spoke about his experience of the Air Force with his dad. Very different experience to mine. But as a kind of 15, 16, 17-year-old, crikey, I've got to find something to do. Went to a careers office and accepted to university, but Dad said, what do you want to do? Do you want to study or do you want to fly jets? And well, that's a no-brainer, isn't it? So I didn't go to uni. So
can I assume, Jim, sorry to cut in, can I assume there are no regrets on that decision? No,
not at all. I'm still doing a Open University degree at the moment in maths. But yeah, it's no regrets whatsoever. I've had a superb 20 years. I'm extremely fortunate to have done, seen and been where I have. But yeah, I mean, a young lad growing up in Kings Lynn, state educated, non-university graduate, stumbles into a careers office, and 20 years later is running a squadron. It's I wouldn't have believed it if you'd have told me. But
does it feel surreal?
I don't really look at it. Does it feel surreal? No, it doesn't feel surreal. It's been a lot of hard work. What has it been? It's been fun.
Fun, right? We're gonna come back to fun, because I think you've had lots of it over the years. So you joined the service. What year was that, Jim? Remind us when you joined. Then talk us through your. So 2001.
Yeah, this is the boring bit, isn't it? 2001.
Not boring for the people listening. It might be for you because it's your history. But 2001, you joined and into the flying training system after Cranwell. Talk us through the whole Cranwell experience and into flying training up until first squadron.
God, 19 years old. No, 18, 19. Just turned 19. 19-year-old James Calvert, in from a state comprehensive, having done his A-levels, just learnt to brush his teeth and tie his shoelaces, and he's running around the North Airfield at Cranwell. I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I was exuberant, maybe. I was confident, completely misplaced confidence, by the way. I had no idea, in hindsight, I had no idea what I was doing. But credit to Cranwell and the training system, I managed to stumble my way through. So finished Cranwell, and I really enjoyed it. But the rose-tinted glasses, that I do remember snow blizzards in Otterburn up in Northumbria, and being taken off a training area because it was minus a lot. I didn't enjoy that very much. But rose-tinted glass, I made some friends there that I'm still friends with today. So that was all right. Then flying training, I flew the tutor from RAF Whitton. That took 6 months or so, bit of a hold. Held at Coningsby, held at Wattisham, doing standard holdie jobs, which are standard holdie jobs are painting walls or covering people when they're on leave or emptying bins, all the sexy stuff.
All good practice for squadron command later.
Well, yeah, it'd surprise you. Apparently, people have forgotten how to empty bins. Or I haven't got enough holding officers, one of the two. No, it's not emptying bins because the book cleaners are never very good. But Linton, RAF Linton on Ouse, which unfortunately that's now gone, but up near York, just north of York, that was an incredible 12 months of my life. And the people who I was on that course with are some of my very best friends even to this day. And that was 2003-04. But yeah,
what was it that bonded you over that time with those mates that you've kept? What was so special?
I don't think I'm allowed to say on this. Mainly alcohol based. No, we're 12 young men all doing the same thing, all thinking we're rock stars, which we weren't. We were just messing around. We were early 20s, getting up to mischief.
I think that's probably enough said there without putting you in the dock.
Yeah.
So 12 months at Linton.
Yeah, a bit of holding time. Oh, crikey, where did I hold between Linton and Valley? Can't remember. My brain is like a sieve. Then to RAF Valley, I don't think it was too long. I don't think I may have just been leave. But then to Valley, where 6 months converting onto the Hawk, first time flying a jet. That was hard work. Linton was really enjoyable. There were 12 people to learn with and from. That was okay, wasn't too onerous. Valley is when I kind of went, crikey, this is really difficult. So flying the Hawk was really hard. I found it hard. There was some young love breakups that didn't help, I'm sure, but Valley was initially, that first 6 months I found quite difficult. Got through finally, got through, and then was fortunate to be sent to Canada. I did 6 months in Canada, did my tactical weapons on the Hawk in Canada, which another incredible 6 months. So that's out of a place called Cold Lake, which is in Alberta, north of Calgary, by half a dozen hours or so. But that was ace. That was brilliant again, because met people from all different nationalities, got to fly in an aeroplane and live a single lifestyle, going and doing weekends in Edmonton, drinking too much, working hard and playing hard. That was great. And then, do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, keep going. You're smiling more and more with these stories, I have to say.
And then, I mean, and better to be lucky than good, hey? So in the mid 2000s, the RAF fast jet fleets were being, as you know, I mean, you were in the thick of it, right? We had fewer and fewer aircraft types as we went through the 2000s. Typhoon was coming online. There was the Harrier was still around, but the majority of people were going GR4. As I mentioned, I didn't do particularly well at Valley. I was okay at TAC weapons, didn't do too badly. And historically, out of let's say 10 people who were getting told which aircraft types they were going to fly, the top person would get Harrier. You would then have maybe 1 or 2 Typhoon were starting to filter in. 6 to 7 would be Tornado GR4, and any remainders would go to the Tornado F3, because that was still just about online at the time. I always wanted that. I remember going into OASC, Officers Aircrew Selection Centre, saying I wanted to fly the Harrier. And the role disposal, well, I'm 4th, 5th, 6th on the list, something like that. So let's forget that one. I'm not going to be there. I'm probably not even going to get a Typhoon job. So Tornado GR4 it is. Let's fly a twin-seat aeroplane around, and I'm sure I'll have a lot of fun. So I get a phone call from the poster. Jim, you going Harrier? I beg your pardon? You going Harrier? Sorry, there's a mistake here. So
did you have to check that he dialed the right number?
Yeah, you know, this is Jim Calvert. Oh, I'm really sorry. I got the wrong person. But I think there happened to be 3 Harrier slots on that roll disposal and 2 or 3 Typhoon. So if you have number 5, and I think they put the Typhoon at the top because it was early days Typhoon, they wanted good guys to go Typhoon. 3 Harrier guys, number 5, unheard of, absolutely unheard of. Better to be lucky than good. So the median performance individual managed to fly one of the RAF's hardest to fly airplanes in the world.
I think there is some, if I again can be this bold, I think there's some false modesty here, but only you will truly know. But you then found yourself then converting onto the Harrier. How's your time on the Harrier?
Oh crikey, I loved it. What a 5 years I had. It was incredible. I was on the aircraft carrier for a couple of times. I did 3 tours of Afghanistan. We talked about moral conflict regarding COVID-19 on 29. Crikey. Afghanistan, that was a moral conflict as well. Leaving my wife, I just got married. No, wrong. We hadn't got married. We moved out. We bought a house together. Just hooked up with my wife, leaving her back at home while going out to Afghanistan. So I did that 3 times. Multiple exercises. Traveled the world. I've been a lot of time in the States. Harry was incredible. I mean, flying the thing, wonderful. Just again, petrified every time you got in it because you wondered what it was going to do. So, I mean, you remember, right? The days at Cottesmore. It was good fun. It was a wonderful base, superb people, and well, as there was recently the force commander at the time who oversaw the drawdown. He put it was on as an article about reminiscing about what happened in 2010, 2011, and that brought back almost a tear to my eye, to be honest with you. But
I think I'm going to make an observation here, Jim. You need to play this back in due course and see, as I'm sure people at home will have noticed, the way that your face has lit up. Not that it hasn't already, but it's lit up the second that you start talking about the Harrier. So you had 5 great years on the Harrier. What were the highs and lows then of your time on the Harrier Force?
What were the highs? The highs were, and oh, crikey, this sounds awful, doesn't it? Doing what I was trained to do, going to Afghanistan, undoubtedly. That was, I mean, the highs. The one high, the thing that gave me the confidence that, or at the time anyway, and politically, that's not my job to comment, but we were at Kandahar, and the majority of British forces on the ground were in Helmand. But at the time, everyone would transit through Kandahar when they went home. We would do most of our close air support over Helmand. At the time, Sangin was ugly. There was still a lot of kinetic activity. We were still dropping a lot of weapons at the time. Right, again, politically, I'm not going to go into it, but we were doing what we were told and within the commander's guidance. And I remember it was Harv Smith. It was he and I were flying together. He's now the RAF's Director of Space. And he and I were flying together. He was squadron boss at the time. I was leading him, which just the way it works, we flip-flop. But I happened to be leading him at the time, and we had there's a troops in contact call. We get called to this incident where some special forces on the ground had been attacked by some Taliban, and they were in the hurt locker. They didn't have anywhere to go. They were running out of ammunition, and they were about to be swamped. So we helped them out without going into too much detail. I didn't have anything else left on my aeroplane. I had my fuel tanks. By the way, I'm known as JJ, Jettison Jim. I have a habit of coming back with not everything on the aeroplane.
Do you get billed for that stuff?
Thankfully not, because I'll be very poor. But we came back with no weapons on the aeroplane. And it was like, okay, this is not abnormal at the time. That was busy, and the boss was like, yeah, Jim, that was a good job. And we learned from it. We analysed the tapes, make sure we didn't do anything wrong, and that we were in line with all the rules of engagement and the like. But it must have been 4 weeks later, knock on the squadron door. Hey, is Vapor 4-1 and 2 in from 4 weeks ago? I've no idea who that is. So I happened to be looking, it was me, why? Have you got 2 minutes? So we then had a chat. This wasn't infrequent, but came by and said, you saved our lives that day.
Hats off to you, fella.
And hats off to you. Yeah, it's hard now thinking about it, but because saving his life, obviously, there's the repercussions of it. But
absolutely, and as you said, that's.
Sorry, Dale, you're breaking up.
Yeah. Dale, we lost you then. Do you just want to say that last bit again?
Yeah, sorry, my phone cut in then. Have you got me back?
Yeah.
I was just saying that, Jim, you'd observed the fact that that's what you had prepared to do, and you mentioned, I won't dive too much onto it, but the moral dilemmas, so something that would appear to have a bit of something that's shaped who you are as an individual, right from, you mentioned about losing your mum at a young age of 13. Those things clearly have shaped the commander that you are today.
Really, yeah. I mean, undoubtedly, I've done horrible things to people who've got families, but you just have to believe and have that faith that, and that's when you're in an airplane and you're employing lethal force, you have to be. There has to be absolutely no doubt that what you're doing is right, and at the time there was no doubt. But undoubtedly there are families who, crikey, I'll try not to think about it too much.
Well, we'll come back round to you and yours and your crowd a little bit later. But you left the Harrier Force at the end of the aircraft gun, which is just as I left Cottesmore, just as it was getting sporting, and the decision had been made for ultimately the Tornado to replace the Harrier. I remember the weeping and wailing. Such is life, but a very interesting time, obviously, for everybody. But you then found yourself heading towards the Typhoon. So greedy man gets Harrier and then Typhoon.
you got it back to, yeah, I'm going to be in the right place, right time. Yeah, I was devastated when the Harrier went. I was about to start the weapons instructor course in 2011, which is something, when you get to the Fast Jet Force, that's kind of the pinnacle of tactical proficiency. We get some comments on this, but it's top gun in the RAF. It's that fighter weapons and tactics. You being that expert on the squadron, I was going to do that in 2011, so that was taken away from me, and I felt, as much as anything, I mean, the 5 years was amazing. It was truly amazing. Yes, that we've spoken about the dilemmas, but it was a fantastic time. Great friends, a brilliant organisation to be a part of, wonderful people. Everyone, the whole station was just, I don't think I've never seen anything like it, and ever since.
No, like for what it's worth, Jim. Likewise, absolutely likewise.
But there, over to the Typhoon. So I spent, there was a bit of a hiatus. Must have been 9-10 months between no longer flying the Harrier. By the way, my last trip in Harrier was in a 2-seater, trying to vertical land the thing at Wittering. That was the hardest landing I've ever done in my life. So a few heartbeats were lost then. And then it was about 9 months, 10 months between that sortie and starting the Typhoon OCU on 29 Squadron, which I'm now commanding. I was a flight lieutenant at the time. But in that 9-month period, that 2011, North Africa got interesting. So Libya, Operation Elmi went off, was happening. So I was parachuted in as someone without a huge amount to do at the time, and parachuted into the UK targeting cell, and that was an enormous benefit to me, just about how operations are planned and run, and how the fog of war, we do our best as commanders, or the commanders at the time did their best, but you're operating with the best intelligence you have, and you make the decisions based on the information you have. So that was fascinating, seeing that. Nothing really more to say on Libya, apart from it being a really good experience. That was a month or so, and then the Typhoon back end of 2011, and different kind of airplane, different role. Turns out, if you haven't done air defense before and you've got 700 hours and think you can fly airplanes, and then you start doing air defense, you've got another thing coming. So
were you told to unlearn everything that you had been taught before?
Yeah, thankfully, because the Typhoon's got some of the capabilities now, some of them are useful, but yeah, at the time, crikey, I had no idea what I'm doing. So it took me a few years to get back up to where I was when I was on the Harrier. So that was 2011, and back into 2013, I'd got all my quals back that I had on the Harrier, and due to, I guess, experience, time as much as anything, I was fortunate enough to get promoted at the end of that. So that was back on 1 Squadron. So I finished my Harrier time on 1 Squadron, and I started my Typhoon time on 1 Squadron. So I was very lucky to be on
the things you do to avoid buying a new Squadron mug, hey?
Yeah, correct. Please, bad. That's the only reason I'm on 29, because I've been on the Squadron before. No more badges.
You're just a recycler.
Yeah, not really upcycling. But yeah, and then a bit of time. I did staff jobs, flight commander, 2 Squadron at Lossiemouth. Stood that squadron up. Helped stand that squadron up as the executive officer. Bit of staff college, time at Air Command at High Wycombe, and then here I am.
And so out of everything that you've done, and I really do think you should look back on the YouTube clip and just see your face, as you mentioned about different types. The one I want to go back to is the question I want to go back to is out of all of that you've done, and we'll exclude the current job, of course, because it'll put you in a very difficult position if you say that your favourite tour has not been the one that you're in. But of all the things that you've done, whether that's the Tucano with a big smile, or flying the Harrier, what's been the best time for you in the service?
4 Squadron Harrier, without a doubt. Hands down. I mean, I don't think it's even close. My first tour, people say first tour, but the first tour was incredible because of the people. The first tour was incredible because I met my wife when I was there, bought first house. I did what I was trained to do. It was just, hands down, loved it. That's crikey, 07 to 09, 2.5 years. So, yeah.
Fantastic. So you mentioned wife, then again, personal detail caveats. You mentioned wife and 2 boys, I think you have.
Yeah, Elizabeth, my wife. So she's currently in the service, but she leaves at the end of this year. Career choices, family, and the like. But yeah, she and I met when we were at Wittering, when I was going through the OCU initially at Wittering, and then we got together when I was on 4. but yeah, 2 boys, 6 and 4, George and Charlie. Crikey, they keep us busy. Unfortunately, they've inherited an awful lot of my personality traits. So my poor wife has 3 people like me in the house. No wonder she's having to give up her job. I mean,
yeah, can't balance the two. Yeah. Now we know that family's really important to you, and I'd like to perhaps talk about what's happening on 29 at the moment with the families. You mentioned about communicating digitally, be it Zoom or Teams or whatever, or Skype or whatever you might use, and WhatsApp groups are plenty by the sound of it. How are you keeping in touch with families during this uncertain time, if indeed at all?
Yeah, so I mean, the Calverts aren't particularly good at staying alive. So all I've got is my dad left, and my sister, of course. But yeah, it's been quite difficult. I mean, my dad and I, we're really close. But for him, he was 1947, so 73 this year. He and my stepmom have, they, as everyone, the vast majority of people that age, were isolating. He says to me, hasn't really affected us, James, to be honest. We just carry on as normal. The only thing we haven't been able to do is play golf. So my sympathy for him, well, I mean, credit to him, he's looking at the positive side of it. But the difficulty really, I think, has been he hasn't been able to see the grandkids, and the grandkids haven't been able to see him. And doing this over virtually, digitally, is not a replacement for the human interaction. And that's that for not. I mean, my kids have gone back to school or nursery. It's them really. It's my folks who've had it worse, but they're not bothered. So it's been all right, to be honest. I speak to them once a week. They're fine. And trying to get them up on FaceTime. I mean, he's 73. He hasn't even got a smartphone. He thinks a modern phone is one with a colour screen. So getting him on FaceTime.
One without a dial on the front.
Correct. Where does it plug in?
Yeah. Have you talk about lockdown and more time at home? I would imagine generally. Have you done anything during lockdown, skills-wise, for example, that you didn't do before? Have you taken up, I don't know, carpentry or baking or?
Have I taken anything up? No, I tried to. I suppose I tried to do a bit of coding. Tried to design a website. What else?
Do you want to give it a free plug? Free plug
no.
now? Or, no,
not a chance.
What you could do, you could upload the video footage that you said the guys are mucking around with at the moment on that video clip that you did. Maybe you can put that on the website and give us the link. We'll happily put that out for you.
No, you're mean, Dal. I don't want more people memeing me. What have I learned? So YouTube, by the way, YouTube's brilliant. I mean, I was watching this morning a gentleman who does a podcast on YouTube, and he says he said 5 habits that in lockdown in particular he's front door, I'm going to ignore it, that he's adopted, and that's learn something new every day. And YouTube, I think, is a great opportunity to be able to learn something new every day. So you can just, I don't know, whatever it might be, learn a new language, learn how to knit, whatever. And so I watch YouTube a lot. I don't learn anything. I just learn about learning stuff.
So you're doing an Open University degree.
Yeah.
You've got two young boys, a serving wife with Biz, and you're running a squadron. So what do you do? What do you do to relax amongst all of that?
I don't think I do. Don't think I relax. A garden. I like gardening.
Favorite plant?
Yes, grass.
The green one.
Grass. No, lavender. I don't know. For me, it's trying to forget, having a break. We live half an hour away from work. For me, that's really useful, because it means that I have that 30 minutes to either calm down or calm up, depending on which way I'm traveling. I'll let you work out which way it is. But then being at home, I just want to try and do something that forgets work, and hence why severing contact with the squadron at 7 p.m. I have a family. The evenings are my family time. So cooking, gardening, pottering around the house.
So
what do I do?
So that probably brings us neatly towards an ideal Sunday. I mean, these are interesting times for everybody, and you've alluded to the fact there's difficult staying in contact with family, and likewise with the squadron. It's all very different. But what does an ideal Sunday look like for the Calvert family?
What does it look like? The boys sleeping in after 6 a.m.
Is that the overdose of Calpol the night before? Just
correct. Well,
take the fever away.
Yeah, just double tap, right? Calpol and ibuprofen. You should do both.
It's probably inappropriate advice there. I should say other sedatives are available.
Sure, they're the ones we use. But yeah, the boys will sleep. I don't know, a cup of coffee, bacon sandwich, and then maybe head to the beach. Not great surf around here, but the boys go nuts for the beach. They just think it's hilarious jumping around in the sea. Yeah, do that. Then probably head back home. Beer, barbecue, sunny weather, decent music. Go to a park or something, and then yeah, just Biz and I sit outside, or we're quite lucky we've got a hot tub, so sit in the hot tub and drink a bottle of wine between us.
This is just an absolute life of luxury: barbecues, beer, hot tubs, beach, surf.
Sounds great. I should probably. There's probably some cycling I should do in there at some point. But if the beach is off the cards, I'll jump on the bike maybe and go for a poodle.
Good. You do actually have a bike then?
Yeah, a road bike. Yeah,
not just an aspiration.
Well, no, I did the Rafa ride, the initial Rutland Border a Peak a few years ago now. So I did. That wasn't particularly enjoyable, but managed to help raise a little bit of money for Rafa. But.
No, and thank you for it. And actually at this point, thank you for all the support you've given over the years, and I know you'll continue to give. I mean, we had a very interesting virtual Rafa rides this year that Gary Waterfall, amongst others, but Gary Waterfall especially pulled together, and it was stunning. I think it was over 60,000, 70,000 in that region pounds raised, just absolutely brilliant.
Yeah,
and we couldn't.
Great, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's brilliant, and we couldn't do it without the support of you and yours, Jim.
Watching him sweat live on Zoom or whatever it was pretty revolting, wasn't it? That entire quarantine.
Well, it was. I think that was Yvonne actually putting a spray bottle over when the camera wasn't on him. Truth be told,
that he was working hard. But.
Absolutely. Yeah. Jim, look, it just leads me to say thank you very much for joining us today. I know that people will be your absolute hallmark modesty. People will, I know, have been fascinated by what's brought you to where you are today. And the humane side of you. You've been very open, and I hope you didn't touch a nerve too often there, but your humane side has come shining right through, and it's just a pleasure to see you again after too many years, chap.
Cheers, Dal. Thanks.
Too many, but we'll see you again soon. Now, it's traditional at this point to, if you've got anything resembling liquid that is all right to drink during the day, and if you haven't, no worries. I'm going to raise my mug to you and say thank you very much, Jim. It's great to see you.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
And I look forward to catching up with you at some stage soon. And in the meantime, best to all the guys and girls on 29.
Thanks. And all the best to everyone. And thanks for listening to me. It's been...
No, it's a pleasure. It's been our absolute pleasure, Jim. You take good care of yourself. And
thanks a lot.
Take care, everybody.